What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
We're going to talk about the ghost of trauma, and in particular, when old calls still haunt you. But I think that there's a lot of aspects here that apply to all of us if we've dealt with any kind of trauma or loss in our lives. And an example that I'm thinking about is, I think it was 2 to 3 Christmases after my mom had died, and you and I were driving out to your folks' house, and then a song came on. I think it was a Tim McGraw song. Mm-hmm. And I remember just like out of nowhere, instantly just breaking down and bawling. And obviously it's like the holidays and I'm thinking about my mom. And even though it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, obviously my body was holding on to it. And, you know, it came out of nowhere. It was so unexpected. And I think that a lot of the times when it comes to trauma, we don't understand that it's okay for our body to be processing things in the way that they do. And our body doesn't have any kind of timeline for when this happens. And a lot of the times we think that there's something wrong with us. You know, it's been 10 years and that sort of thing still happens to me. And, you know, with grace, I accept it. And like, I kind of cycle through it and I experience what my body is telling me to experience. And I think it's so important for us to all be able to do that.
Yeah, I think if we always push it down or push it out, it's not giving us any service associated to it and not letting us heal or handle to address the trauma associated to whatever incident it may be. Like what comes to mind for me is, you know, I can ask as a first responder, I can say, what was the worst traffic accident you went to? What was the worst homicide you went to? What was the worst crime you went to? Like, and as I'm listing those, your brain automatically takes you to those specific calls that come up for you first time. And I think it's one of those things, whether you almost have a feeling inside your body of like, oh yeah, that was bad. And you're visualizing what you experienced in that instance and holding on to that it's always going to be there, but holding on to the feelings and emotions associated to it, it's not always healthy. You need to find those avenues of being able to release it.
Yeah. And it's very interesting when you think about flashbacks or intrusive thoughts. I know for me, like the worst person that's ever entered my life, like I will randomly have intrusive thoughts about her, like things that I would never act on, of course, but even it shocks me, like where did this thought come from? And I think that there are things like smells even or sounds that will bring you back to that exact moment that you were in that traumatic situation or maybe on that traumatic call that you have totally forgotten about. And, you know, this might trigger things like anxiety, panic. You might get angry all of a sudden for no reason. And all of this comes without any kind of warning, but it's totally normal.
Yeah, being able to recognize it is that first kind of that step in the process of the healing with it, because trauma can show its ugly face anytime and you never know what could specifically trigger it, but it's how you handle it in that moment, knowing your location, knowing who's around you, knowing what you can do to address that so you're not having that negative annotation towards yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to be super real with yourself about it. So I'm going to give you an example of this one. Let's say that we're talking about emotional numbness and you think that it's normal in your life, okay? And a situation might be your wife comes up to you and says, hey, it's little 3-year-old Johnny's birthday party this Saturday and we need to go buy him a present. And the last thing you want to do is go to little Johnny's birthday party and you can't really pinpoint why. And then all of a sudden it kind of clicks for you, whether it's subconscious or not. And you realize that 3-year-old that, you know, drowned in a pool at their holiday barbecue party or something like that, there might be a connection there. And so sometimes we kind of suppress that and we don't link things together. But if you're feeling a certain way about something and it doesn't really make sense, like why would you want to be disconnected from your family going to little Johnny's birthday party? Just ask yourself, like, why might I be feeling that way? And it might have nothing to do with that 3-year-old boy at all. It might have something to do with something totally different. Maybe something relating to like a social circle, or you know, they were talking shit to you at the police department behind your back or something like that, you know? So just try to discover what those connections might be.
And like Ashley says this all the time, and I steal this from her because I really like it. It's information. And what we do with information, instead of just throwing it to the side, and it's using that information to have an understanding of how we can address it or what's causing those issues to be able to change our reaction to it.
Yeah, one of my really good friends used to be a police officer, and we talk a lot. And something that I will always do is I will point out his irritability or any of his outbursts, because he's somebody that I know well. So it's very easy for me to see when something is off. And this is a very, very common sign of like cycling through trauma, even if we don't really know that we are. So some examples might be that you're snapping at your spouse or your kids or even your dogs over super small things, because maybe there's something deeper that's been unprocessed. And the impact that this has is that when we have unresolved trauma, it's often going to surface as things like anger or even hypersensitivity.
Yeah, recognizing when that happens it's hard to do as yourself, especially if something's happening. And that's why it's so good to have outside sources being able to highlight that for you, because you're not always going to recognize it. You're thinking it's just normal. Oh, it's just my normal behavior. But if you have someone from the outside saying, hey, what the hell's going on? What's going on with you right now? You're not acting like your normal self.
Something else that I'm thinking about, and it's because of an example I'm about to share, is that we don't always need to have an answer as trauma being the reason why, right? There doesn't always have to be a reason why. Like you're allowed to have. You could be in a bad mood because of chemical imbalances. Maybe you haven't eaten. Maybe your exercise routine sucks. Like there could be a million reasons for things. These are just some indicators that are probable based on your profession if you work in one to where trauma is very prevalent. And I'm saying that because I'm thinking about our next example of sleep disturbances, because I just shared a dream with Clint. Where you might be having very vivid dreams or insomnia that could be tied to past incidents. But of course, it's not necessarily always the case. The example I gave to Clint of the dream that I had last night was that I was laying on the floor and a man had his whole big body on top of me, but all of his weight was sitting on the top of my chest. And his chest was also covering my mouth and most of my nose. And I was trying to tell him that I couldn't breathe. And I was like struggling to yell at him because I couldn't speak because I couldn't breathe. And then I woke up. I don't think that has anything to do with something trauma related in my past. Like I'm very good at like psychoanalyzing myself, and like there's no correlation or connection there. Maybe one day I'll figure out that there was, but my point is that it doesn't all necessarily have to be trauma related. Like I'm allowed to have a bad dream, right? And it was actually because we ate a Reese's bunny last night. That was actually probably the exact reason why that happened.
Yeah, and it's being able to recognize. I mean, it's okay to wake up on the wrong side of the bed sometimes, to know that you didn't get good sleep or something disturbing. It's not always trauma related, but it could be. It's like I said earlier, it's information. It's being able to take that information and compile it to see kind of what's going on.
Another example is avoidance behavior. So you might avoid locations, calls, maybe conversations that remind you of that one incident. I know for me, like driving by the office that I used to work, like I can't even look in that direction. So that's definitely something that, I haven't fully processed yet, because for me, like it's just like this part of me never existed, like that she never existed, right? Like it was so toxic and so unhealthy that I just want it gone, basically. So avoidance like that could reinforce the trauma loop, and oftentimes it can limit emotional processing even.
And like looking at it from like the first responder realm, I've actually seen this before, is avoiding an intersection. Like if you're out on patrol and you avoid a specific intersection where an incident happened, whether it was a partner got into a traffic accident and it's something, and you're not even doing it consciously, you never go through that intersection because you're worried something's going to happen or worried something is going to come up for you when you do.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important tactical tools to actually be able to process and release old trauma is to first make sure that you're acknowledging things without shame. You can do things too, like talking to a peer or a counselor. Clint and I do a great job at having deep conversations with one another about shit. And, I call you out a lot. Just because we don't personally like that negative energy around. I know nobody does, but a lot of people don't face it head on. In that exact moment, we face it head on because that's not something that You know, I had an incident with my dad that was pretty traumatic yesterday. Him calling me and telling me something insane. For anybody not familiar, my dad has onset dementia. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And so the first thing I did was I went out to find you. You were doing something with the truck, and I needed to talk about that and get it out, instead of why would I sit there for 10 more minutes until you came in, when I wanted it gone and processed. And you're allowed to do that. Journaling, of course, is great because you can detail your emotion. There's a lot of somatic tools that you can use, like breath work or even movement. My personal favorite, and this is going to sound corny, but I would implore you to be able to figure out what it is for yourself, is to create your own closure rituals. So this could be something like, I don't know, lighting a candle and then blowing it out, right? And then truly having deep focus on that candle flame being the thing that you're going to be able to get rid of. You could do things like praying, of course. You can have a single place of peace in your house. You can talk things out loud if you wanted to. You could sit in a chair and have another chair in front of you and pretend like you're talking to that person or to yourself even. Like, you have a ritual. What is it? You're shaking your head.
It's like I was analyzing it in my brain as you were talking about this. I'm like, wow, I think that is the real reason why I do that. I think back to when I first started learning about meditation. You were teaching me about that and holding onto a red balloon and releasing that red balloon in my mind. But then I went deeper. It's like, well, that red balloon reminds me of Pennywise from It. And if I hold on to it, like, he's going to pull me down into the drain. So I have to release it. Otherwise, Pennywise is going to freaking eat me.
I like that. So for me, I take that thing or the image of the thing and I put it on our target out front and I shoot it.
Yeah.
I literally blow it up.
Yeah.
That's my red balloon. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.